Hey guys, welcome back. Well, we're not officially back. Johnny's got me out of detour retirement, and it's a good reason because one of the biggest guests we've had on the show, Iffy, Chris Froome, 4-time Tour de France winner.
Yes, as a lot of people would know now, that he rode the Warrnambool on Saturday, which was just a real coup. Karen Jones, I think it was young Luke who contacted her about wanting to ride, but Plappy. But in the end, he couldn't. But that started the ball rolling, and he was up training with Chris up at Bright. And Chris said, "Well, you're riding, I'll ride." But even so, then when Plappy couldn't, I contacted him through his Swanee, Danny Clark, Simon's younger brother, and he said, "Yeah, no, he's interested." So we managed to arrange through a mate of a mate a small plane to fly down from Port Punka, just next to Bright. And they landed down at Avalon, and and he rode. That sounds really easy. That's how it was supposed to go. It didn't go quite like that. It was a bit of an iffy story, as they might say. But hey, he's so cool and calm, and it was just wonderful to be a part of, actually. He ended up with lots of issues. The fog, couldn't take off. Then a big storm coming in towards Geelong, had to go right around the back of Port Arlington and into Avalon. Landed about 2 minutes to 8. Race was supposed to start at 8. We're putting his bike together on the start line virtually, putting numbers on. I had a race radio for him, trying to get that working. And Hank Vogels was helping out a bit. He was sort of helping look after him a bit with their.
Speaking of colds, how are you going? You've wiped your nose a record 8 times in the opening 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, it's running a little bit. I think it was a long lunch I had. No, anyway, he was just so cool. Jumps on the bike, doesn't know anyone there really, and I got to tell you, it's just about one of the best hour and a halves of my bloody life following him, because he had no team car there, so we jumped in.
I've got vision of that.
Yeah. Well, we'll wait until he's on. We'll show that.
Well, we can show it now because it's a bit of a non-event, but
Bats Road
goes to throw the bidden back. And it hits the car, bounces off. Intention was good. What happened then, John?
There were riders there. You're talking to him.
There's a witch's hat in the middle of the road. Brett Robinson, who's owner of Bayside Citroen, our great sponsor of the Bay Crits. He managed to run straight over it, but he reckons he had no other option, which he probably didn't actually. But anyway, it was quite funny at the time. Yeah.
But it's. I mean, we've talked about it a lot on the show, particularly grassroots cycling, and to have the likes of a Chris Froome riding, the Melbourne and Warrnambool, which in its heyday, I mean, this is the longest one-day race in the world. Yeah.
Well, it's one of the longest still. I think Milan San Remo is the only one that's longer on the world calendar now, but. Its heyday, it was the biggest one-day race in Australia, and as races like Tour Down Under and Cadell's race, and the Bay Crits get higher up. Throw that one in. It's lost a bit, but I can tell you, this made a huge difference getting Chris on the start line. The crowd, I reckon, probably doubled with having Chris there. It was just back to the halcyon days. Huge crowd, all pumping, and Chris made it too, because they ended up nearly 10 minutes down the back group. The whole peloton back there. There were 16 up front, the whole peloton, and then it started splintering at the front, splintering at the back. 6 of them got clear of that back group. As I say, 10 minutes down, and then of that 6, Froomey and Ben Hill rode clear. And for the last hour, it's just the 2 of them. And they reduced that. They took more than 5 minutes out of that deficit. So it was a pretty impressive effort. As Chris said, he turned himself inside out. But it was fantastic.
I think we've got Froomey in the docks here. I think we've got the right internet. Chris Froome, can you hear us? No. We've got an image of Froomey. It's a good start. I hope we're playing Qantas because, geez, if we can lay on Wi-Fi issues, it's another level.
Yeah, well, we see him. At least we know that we've gotten close. Can you hear us, Chris?
Yes, I can. I can. How you doing?
Very good, mate.
We've started the show and we were just talking about the chaotic start and your trip in the plane. And we just touched on that, actually. It would be good to hear your version of that because you're the one having to be stuck in a small plane flying out of fogs and storms. There's Danny in the back. Getting a bit nervous because I think you were getting some flying lessons at the same time. He was very nervous then.
Yeah, I was on the way back, thankfully. But yeah, on there, that was a bit risky. We moved there because the pilot quite right, so didn't want to stop in the fog, and so I was hanging over 4-punker runway at the time. But once we got up and then we had clear skies, so I guess it was pretty fun.
I think we've got a few technical issues with
the
your
race, but
Froomey. The Wi-Fi connection doesn't seem to be that flash, and we've just lost him. So it's classic. This is classic detour. Whenever we build something up, and then we get the guests on, and then the Wi-Fi carks it, it's the same old story. So, given that Froomey's going back to Europe, he probably got a prepaid and he's probably used up.
I was telling our new sponsor for the day, Brett Robertson from Citroen Eurodrive in Melbourne, and I said it's a really good show, very professional. Now he's finding out the truth, so he probably won't ever sponsor it again. But anyway, he did have a great day in the car on Saturday, so it was him that ran over the witch's hat.
Yeah, exactly. So now this is the part of the show where we have backups, Johnny, and we will get back to Froomey once we get the Wi-Fi issue sorted. But in other results over the weekend, it was great to see our old little Colombian kangaroo, Esteban Chavez, break through and win his first national road title for Colombia. Yeah,
it's a wonderful effort, actually. He hasn't been able to pull it off even when he was at his best. So that's fantastic. See Quintana there. So all the big hitters were there. So don't know what's going to happen with him this year. Quintana. Hello. Looks like he's back.
Not sure if you can hear me now.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
You weren't on the Qantas Wi-Fi, were you?
I was. So
there you go. It's always the way. But we could barely make out what you're saying, but we're chatting about the flight over to the Melbourne and Warrnambool.
That was we had a bit of a sketchy start there. I mean, we had a lot of low hanging fog and cloud, and the pilot quite rightfully didn't really want to take off in those conditions, so we had to just wait it out and wait until it lifted a little bit. Which meant that I got in at about 10 minutes before the race started. So it was pretty chaotic, but it was definitely an experience I won't forget in a hurry.
It was sensational. I think they held the start up for you for about 10 minutes. But so give us your impressions of your first Melbourne to Warrnambool, being that you're riding as an individual, you've got no team support, and you don't know many of the riders. So it must have been a little bit daunting.
So it was pretty comical, actually, because I thought I'd done my homework and figured out a bunch of names to watch. Actually, Plappy gave me a list of guys I should watch out for, and I went and got their race numbers, wrote down their numbers on my stem. But if you remember, it was such a cold day. Everyone started with jackets on, so they were covering up their race numbers. So I couldn't actually see. I couldn't tell who was who. Like I didn't know anyone. So it was pretty amusing. I mean, but one thing that everyone kept saying to me is, wait until at least 150, 180 Ks. Just hide out in the bunch the best you can, and then the racing will start. Well, 20 Ks in, we had more than 20 guys up the road already, and I was just sitting back in the bunch thinking, this is not a good start. This is not going well. And everyone who I went to sort of try and speak to see if, listen, are you guys interested in riding today to try and bring this back? No one was interested. And I kept getting the same answer from all the riders. Everyone was saying, wait until after Port Campbell. After Port Campbell, the race will open up again. And I thought that's a bit strange, because if the front has got such a big lead, why would the racing open up behind again? I mean, it's game over. Yeah. But sure enough, we reached Port Campbell and hit the crosswinds, a couple of small like rolling climbs, and the bunch exploded, and a small group of us managed to get away. Wasn't working that great because a couple of those guys had teammates in front, and anyway, I just had my head down and was just working, and found myself off the front on my own. A few minutes later, Ben Hill came across to me, and kind of looked at each other and thought, oh well, yeah, 70 Ks to go. What have we got to lose? Like, let's at least get a good training ride in and give it everything we've got, and see how close we get to bringing the front guys back. So we did manage to reel in a few guys, but still a good way off the race leader.
Yeah, but you're only a minute or so behind third place. You were 10 minutes down at one stage on that group. So you were 5 minutes down on the young guy who won, but he was by nearly 2 minutes in front of second, and then it was 3 minutes back to third. You were only 2 minutes behind third. So now you guys did a great job, and I was fortunate enough, slightly illegally because I had no official role, but I was behind you for the last that whole 6. We were the only car there, so giving you a bidding, and even though you're a terrible throw, you try to throw one back in the window, you missed by a bloody mile. But anyway,
I did. It was terrible. Actually, I felt bad about that one. Yeah,
well,
it was a good experience.
Show that vision again.
Interview. No, but the post-race interview, I was going to say, if he does the photo bomb in the background, I thought he was carrying 24 toilet rolls, and apparently it was team support for you, Froomey. But it's put Iffy in a bit of hot water because Jerry Ryan reckons he's defunct. He's no longer the Jayco Alula mascot, so he's done. He's finished.
They weren't there. I'm allowed to step up when the Jayco team's not there. It's fine. They
That's it. Fair enough.
None of them had the bloody kahunas to get in and ride it like you did, mate. I'll tell you that. So that was fantastic.
I appreciate that, mate. Thank you.
But I've got to say, we'll go back and we're going to talk about some other stuff shortly as well. But following you and Ben, you work so well together. As you say, 60K together, and you already given yourself a really hard block in the 3 days before, so getting towards the end, as you said, you were getting cross-eyed, but it was fantastic to watch. And you are such a hard bloke to tell if you're going okay or not, because you always look like you're in trouble, because that's the way you ride.
I always look terrible. Yeah, I guess that's just my
so it's hard
elbows
to say,
out.
because I was getting messages from Danny Clark. How's he going? I said, I think he's going okay. I think.
Oh, brilliant. No, yeah, it was a good day. It was a good block for me. I mean, I'd done 200 Ks on the Thursday, 150 on the Friday, and so that was the last day of the block for me. So it was a big block of training. But now, that's what I'm here for. That's what I'm in Australia for, and hopefully I'll be able to take that forward and build on that as racing starts over in Europe.
What fascinates me, Froomey, is like guys like yourself that have achieved the pinnacle in cycling. You've obviously got a formula or a block that works. I remember when the guys went over to South Africa with Green Edge, you were over there doing training and so forth. How much does that have to tweak particularly in the last couple of years, given your injury, to, get to that form that you want to get to that you had a couple of years ago?
Well, I think that's where I'm at now. Is all that's left now is to do the hard work and try and get back in the form. I'm not carrying any more injuries from that crash. I haven't got any imbalances, I don't think, from that crash anymore. Now all I need to do is just crack on with the work and do what I'm used to doing to get ready for the big races. So that's very much where my mindset is, and I just want to get stuck in and do as much as I can to try and get as close as I can to form a level.
We've got a couple of live comments. Iffy, Damien Spike, Games HQ says, Froome 80k solo breakaway in 2023. It's going to happen. Obviously, that's a flashback to that famous ride at the Giro when you rolled Yatesy out of the pink jersey. You were there, Johnny, were you?
Yeah, I was there. Yeah. Amazing day. I wasn't so happy with you that day, Froomey, but
yeah, I can imagine.
It wasn't going to matter for Yates.
Yeah,
he'd really blown it.
Yeah, but, lights went out for him that day.
Yeah, but I'll tell you, that's also famous for that amazing descent you did that day. It's the first time I'd seen anyone descending, laying on the top bar and pedaling at the same time. You started a bit of an art form with that, mate.
Yeah, I think there were a couple of guys doing it before me already, but I'd sort of practiced that all winter and found I could do it pretty efficiently and quickly going downhill. And what was great about that day is, okay, I mean, obviously I really went for it on the climbs and I was pushing as hard as I could, but it was such a boost to my confidence getting down to the bottom of each descent and hearing that I'd made up another 30, 45 seconds on the pink jersey just from the descent, and it almost felt as if that was for free, and that just really G'd me on for the remaining kilometers. And I think it was just a whole load of things coming together for that perfect scenario to happen on that stage.
If you had to rank your top rides, would that have to be in the top echelon that day at the Giro?
Yeah, I'd have to say that's probably my best day on the bike as a bike racer. I mean, the team really helped set it up into the foot of Finestra for me, but then those 80Ks solo, it really was just sort of mindset and grit, I guess, just to get me through and to not to throw in the towel thinking it's too far to go, obviously.
Now, it's tough.
we obviously, Chris, is you're heading back to Europe, so we don't have a heap of time, but if we get to like the nuggets and we peel it back right to the early days, could you set the scene for us? We've got a great photo here of a fresh Chris Froome when you're in the Barlow World kit. Tell us about those early days when you were with Barlow World, and did you back then have ambitions to one day win the Tour de France?
No. I mean, obviously it's every kid's dream, but I thought realistically when I joined Barlow World, I was this kid from Kenya, just come onto the European scene for the first time. I had no idea what I was doing. I was going to races that I'd never. I mean, races like Liège-Bastogne-Liège, Amstel Gold, races, I didn't have the cycling history that Europeans had. I came over and I had no clue how these races were raced or what kind of races they were. And the first year as a neo-pro, I did all the Ardennes Classics. I did Paris-Roubaix. I did, and then they threw me into the Tour de France as well, which was just last minute. So I mean, as a neo pro, I really did get thrown in the deep end, but it was amazing. I was living the dream as a pro, but I just had no clue what I was doing. I was just bouncing around the peloton and trying to survive. And I think then at that point, my dream was to win a stage of the Tour de France. I thought if I can maybe be in a lucky breakaway and win a mountain stage of the Tour de France, that would be my dream completed. So I didn't actually really, I guess, understand my true potential as a rider at that point.
I remember you rode the Sun Tour back in 2008, I think it was, with Barlow World. Yeah, there you are. And finished fourth in that Sun Tour. But I remember the stage up Mount Buller where I think you either ran first or second. I remember it was a really strong ride, and I remember noticing you then. I think I noticed you as much for that and as much for your different style. I thought, gee, this bloke's a bit different. But what are your memories of that? 'Cause I remember that on the Mount Bullers when Stewie thought he'd buggered it. He lost the lead to his teammate, but then came out and did a great time trial next day.
Yeah, I can't remember very well what happened that day, but I think I did have a good ride up on Mount Buller, and I must have been up there somewhere. But yeah, I just remember looking forward to those days that finished uphill, and it wasn't a big sort of I didn't have to battle it out with other guys sprinting for the line or anything. I really did just look forward to the uphills where I could just do my own thing, and I obviously had a good engine and get me onto the last climb, and off I'd go. But the rest of my racing ability, I had no clue what I was doing. I had no idea about positioning, no idea really about tactics. So yeah, those were early days for me, and I think I could shine on days like Mount Buller, but the rest of my race was pretty shocking, to be honest.
How much did it change then when you went across to Team Sky? Like, they're obviously famous for marginal gains and, you know, how professional the outfit was, but how much did that change, you know, your whole career?
Yeah, I mean, that was really the turnaround point for me. I mean, I spent a good lot of time riding with Bradley Wiggins, and he was obviously the big leader on the team at that time, and I guess learning how to pace myself, how to sort of almost copy his style of riding, being more conservative, staying with the team. And I think I learned so much in those first couple of years at Sky that when I was able to put 2 and 2 together and actually put the engine and the actual understanding of how a race unfolds and how to ride a race, then I was able to come second in that Vuelta in 2011, which then got upgraded to a win a few years later when Kobo had his issues. So I mean, it did all come together really through those early years of being at Sky, and I guess learning to be more controlled and where to use my energy at the right times.
Now, we can't let this one go without talking a bit more about 2012. You end up running second to Wiggo, but there was an enormous battle going on. You felt you wanted to go for a stage. He was really worried about you, and to the stage where I read somewhere that he threatened to pull out of the race. He told the Sky team, "You're going to pull out."
I was rooming next to him at that hotel, and I heard it,
okay.
and he cracked it. It's all retrospective now. I mean, who cares?
Yeah.
But at the time, it must have been pretty difficult position to be in because
it was
honest,
a pretty.
He robbed you of another tour.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's so many cases in cycling where you can go if this and if that, but
Hey,
at the end of the day, that was how it unfolded, and I was young. I had obviously I'd just come second in the Vuelta the year before, and I really wanted to go for it myself in the Tour that year. But having a teammate in the yellow jersey meant that obviously I needed to ride in support of him, even though I felt I had the legs to do a bit more on the climbs myself. But yeah, that's professional cycling, and probably if I had been a few years older and more experienced, I might have just taken my earpiece out of my ear and just cracked on with it. But I wasn't. I was young. I was coming up the ranks, so I did the team thing and basically set up and rode at his speed on the climbs and did what I could to keep the jersey on his shoulders.
Yeah, sensational. And the other one that stands out, we can talk about all your great wins, but this part here, and you. I was lucky enough to be at a corporate function during Tour Down Under, and Matty Keenan interviewed you and Geraint Thomas, and it was a great interview. But he asked you about that stage. You know, why were you running? You know, why didn't you just stand and wait for the car? And you explained it really well. So, but most of the people wouldn't have heard that. So, I'd love to hear it again.
Yeah, well, I mean, in in my mind, obviously the race organizers had moved the finish halfway down the mountain because there were 100-kilometer-an-hour winds up top that day, and they hadn't had time to set up the barriers 3 kilometers out like they normally do. So I think we were just over a kilometer from the finish, and the crowds were in the middle of the road and basically stopped the lead motorbike that was in front of us. Richie went piling into the back of the motorbike. I went piling into Richie, and Mollema went into the back of me, and then we even had a motorbike that was following us drive over the back of my frame and actually broke my bike. So the other two got going, and I was left standing there. I could see that the frame was snapped. And I was like, well, we've just attacked the main group of GC guys. They're probably 30, 40 seconds behind us. I've got just over a kilometer to the finish. There's no barriers where we are. It's just chaos. There's people everywhere. I'm like, I'm not going to get a bike here. Like, there's no chance of getting a bike here anytime soon. I'm going to be waiting for ages. I just thought, right, there's just over a kilometer to the finish. I'm going to keep heading at least in that direction. So even if I don't make it to the finish, I make it to a few hundred meters to go. At least that will be enough to get a bike easily. There's not going to be people standing in the middle of the road everywhere. If I can just run into where I know the barriers are and get myself closer to the finish, I'm going to save time as well, because every second counts in the Tour de France. You never know when you're going to need those seconds, and it didn't sit well with me just standing there like a vegetable on the side of the climb waiting for a bike. So I just had to keep moving and keep heading towards the finish line.
I can remember that stage because I drove the course with Julian Dean, and I remember those crowds, and there was no like police presence or very little. And then we saw 300 police guys at the finish line. And I said to Jules, I go, what is going on? Mate, that's going to be carnage. And sure enough, when it happened, but also for me, the chaos that was after that finish, because Adam Yates was obviously riding with Green Edge, and I think everyone was in panic, and they wanted to give him the yellow jersey. And I think if he had have said, no, stick to the rules, you know, this is how we're going to do it. But wasn't he the one that actually said, I don't feel comfortable, because there was just panic. And then they did the right thing in the end and neutralized the last couple of Ks.
Yeah, I mean, I think at the end of the day, it was a commissaire decision, but I don't really know whose decision that was or anything. I'm just obviously extremely grateful that I didn't lose 5-6 minutes or whatever it took me to get over that finish line that day, because when the car did catch up to me, first of all, the Mavic car got to me, gave me it may have well have been a tricycle, what they gave me to get on with speed play pedals. When I was riding Shimano, it was just like, man, what am I going to do with this thing? I rode a couple hundred meters on that thing, and then my team car arrived, and so I mean, it was just chaos. But I was extremely grateful that obviously the commissaires saw a little bit of sense and neutralized the events from that accident to the finish.
Yeah.
Now, around that era, Froomey, you were also part of one of the viral sensation videos. Just to jog your memory, and as if he knows, we've milked this cow many a times. This was the scene with Neil Stevens at the Vuelta in 2016, I think. So let's have a squish.
Hey, Froomey, you saw that video of his the other day? Say again? The video with him the other day, my passenger said, "Where's Froomey?" I said, I don't know where Froomey is. Yeah, he did not like that story, did he?
He was thinking, get to the punchline, mate.
Yeah.
That was brilliant. He just wasted his time to tell him, yeah, how'd it go? And then where's Froomey? Great story.
8 years have passed, mate. Is that still the worst story ever told to you on a bike?
Oh, that was yeah. I still cringe when I think about that. I was waiting for him to tell me this. I don't know, some elaborate ending or something, but it's like, where are you going with this, mate? It was just the most random moment of racing I probably had in my life.
Good old Steve-O. Yeah.
But obviously,
brilliant.
you touched on it before. Obviously, it was a tragic event. The crash. You're out on the bike leading the Dolphin, yeah? Because I saw a Men's Health article and it was talking about the crash and it was all about the winds. And then I did a bit of trolling and it said, what happened to Chris Froome in his accident? And Sir Dave Brailsford said it was because you took your hand off your handlebars to blow your nose. Is that correct? Or was that Sir Dave's
So what I'd done is I'd taken my hand off the handlebars and basically, when you're giving it one of those to your teammate behind you, basically to say move, because Wout Poels was behind me. I don't actually remember what happened. I've lost my memory from the crash, from the actual crash itself. I remember the moments after the crash, but I don't know what caused the crash or what actually happened during the crash. But Wout says that I've used my hand to basically tell him to move, and the next second that hand never made it back onto the handlebars. I was just like straight off the side of the road into someone's brick wall. So perfectly straight piece of road. It's just one of those freak crashes, I guess. And I mean, what I can work out from it is that it was a very windy day, and we'd just gone through a town at relatively high speed, over 60 k's now. It was a slight downhill, and I imagine what happened was wind probably came from behind one of the buildings and took my front wheel, and I just lost control, I guess, and gone into someone's driveway wall. So not quite blowing my nose, but I was signaling to the guy behind me, and that was it.
A lot of people, and obviously you're not normal given, you're 4-time Tour de France winner, and you've got something special that can push through elements where most people go, nah, it's too hard. But were there any parts in that recovery where you were sort of thinking, I don't know if I can get through this recovery part?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely been moments where, I mean, man, it took me over a year just to walk without limping. And during that time, there was part of me thinking, man, I'm not going to be racing again like that. It's not going to happen. But sure enough, I mean, I've been doing hours and hours and hours of rehab over the years following the crash, and I think I finally got to a point now. Last season, I got to a point where I was no longer in pain. I no longer had any issues. So it felt good last year being able to go to the Tour de France and at least being at the pointy end on a big stage like Alpe d'Huez. Didn't get the win. Came third behind Pidcock and Louis Meintjes, but still felt good to be up racing again at the highest level, and something that for this year, it's given me motivation for this year. I'd like to try and pick up, get to that level again, and hopefully build on that.
I gotta say, it might have been Melbourne to Warrnambool and not Milan San Remo, but sitting behind you for 60 odd k's, you just swapping turns, you and Ben Hill, it looked like the Froomey of old. I mean, you're there. It was all coming out, and Ben Hill is a seriously good bike rider. He should be, should have been.
He is good. I was extremely impressed. I was extremely impressed with the ride he had, because he even in the last 10 k's, he definitely had more than I did, and he finished it off in the same way we started. Whereas for me, the lights were going out in those last 10 k's.
Yeah, he ran second in the Warrnambool just a couple of years ago, but up until that stage, and you could see around about 15k to go, I reckon, you would just start, the fatigue was just starting to come. But up until that point, you didn't miss a beat, and you looked fantastic. So
I appreciate that. Thank you, Iffy.
Well, to me, it looked like, this is Chris coming back. I know I asked you that during the tour. Are we going to see the Chris Froome of old? Well, I'm starting to reckon we're going to see it very soon. So you're at the airport now. What's the plans? Where to, and what's the next race?
So flying home, back over to Monaco, go and see the family for a few days, and then next week I'm off to the Tour of Rwanda for the best part of 2 weeks. 2 weeks out there.
Now, I have to ask you before we wrap things up, how's our old mate Sam Bewley going in his freshly pressed Israel shirt there? How's he transitioning into the DS role?
He's been an amazing addition. I mean, it was his first race down under this year, but you wouldn't have been able to tell. Like from a rider's point of view, he was spot on. Amazing on the radio. He's a natural leader, so really happy to have him on board with us.
And so tell us a little bit about. I was going to ask about Rwanda because you just toured Rwanda. I don't know much about it. I know you told me a little bit about it in the car the other day. But how many World Tour teams that are there?
I'm not actually sure, Iffy. I haven't seen a start list. I know Israel's been doing it for the last few years. I've never been there before, so it's going to be a first for me as well.
Okay. Last one from me, Froomey. We ask a lot of guests on the show, what's the best bit of advice you can give to the viewers or listeners out there to particularly overcoming adversity, and we've touched on it before, that they can take into their everyday life, mate?
For me, I think the biggest part of overcoming adversity for me has been being able to compartmentalize stuff. Obviously, during the Tour de France, I've had the French hating on me for years when I was winning, and pretty distracting at times when you've got crowds really turning against you sometimes. But being able to really compartmentalize stuff and just focus on what you want to achieve. You've got to ask yourself what's important to you and make that the priority, and pretty much just black everything else out. So for me, that's been gold during my career, and that's what's made it happen for me.
Oh, that's a fantastic answer. And just on that, I was on the climb at Alpe d'Huez this year, and it was amazing to see the French support turn, because now they're like, oh, he's not in yellow, and they gave you massive support.
It's funny. I mean, I copped it for so many years with them, but yeah, all of a sudden.
You certainly copped it. They weren't just taking the piss figuratively. They were literally. They were doing it figuratively.
Exactly. They're throwing it. Yeah, exactly. But it really has transformed, and it's amazing to see the support I've got now in France. Now that I'm not wearing the yellow jersey, so it's pretty cool in some ways. I'll definitely take that over how it was previously.
Well, I don't know about that. If you got the yellow on, you might bloody put up with it, I reckon. But anyway.
Yeah. No, I'll definitely swap it. If it meant getting yellow again, then I'll definitely take it back.
Well, we want to wish you a safe flight back, mate, and we really appreciate you coming on the detour. And also, well done for riding the Melbourne and Warrnambool. We were talking about it before you came on about what it does, particularly for grassroots cycling in Australia. So you're a legend, mate.
Be good to see a few more pros doing it in future editions.
Well, I think Karen's working on a way to do that. I mean, now you've started something, Chris. It's really good. And I know our sponsor from Citroën, Bayside Citroën, Brett actually had a ball with him and his young son. Were part of the Froome team. I think you got a photo there of the Froomey team. I sent it to you, Dan.
Oh no,
back in the plane. But anyway, they just had a ball, and we haven't even ran the ad yet, but we'll run that when Chris goes, I guess. But it's been sensational. And I tell you what, you have sparked something. So I think Karen's going to working with Cycling Australia and the people of Warrnambool, how we can change it into a UCI event that will allow some of the teams to ride. So it'd be great to get Jake Alula, and maybe you can twist the Israel team's arm to ride and get 2 or 3 pro teams would be wonderful.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right,
stuff,
guys.
mate.
Well, thank you. I better get going. Thanks.
No worries.
Right,
Take it easy.
Thanks heaps, mate. Yeah, safe flight, Bill.
Chris Froome, what a legend. You prompted us before. If he is a quick word from our great mates at Bayside Citroën.
Breathe in, breathe out. Here, you're surrounded by silence. You feel in total harmony with your movement, with the world. Here, you simply feel serene, at peace.
All new Citroën C5X.
There you go, Iffy. Where do you want to go if you want a new rig this year?
Bayside Citroen. And I got to tell you, it's a car and a half. I had one in at the Vuelta this year, for the last half of the Vuelta. Wonderful car. I fell in love with it there. But the model here is even a later model. And it's, I think the top of the range when I was driving, it's around about the $60,000 mark, 60 or 63. I don't know another car in that price range that's got everything. It's like top of the range Merc with everything that opens and shuts. It even runs over witches' hats without doing any damage at all. You'd hardly even know you hit it.
Like they weren't even there. BaysideCitron.com.au. Go check out the website. I'm sure the guys there will look after you. Now, recapping as well, Johnny, there was another result that you wanted to talk about, and that is, of course, Mathieu van der Poel and Wout van Aert in the cyclocross.
You know what? What a rivalry they've had for 10 years. Their rivalry has been like this since they were juniors. And it was, I think, 5-4 or 4-3 in World Championships. If Van Aert had beaten him, it would have been 4-all, but now it's gone the other way. I think it's 6-3. But, yeah, sensational race, a great finale. Remembering that Wout van Aert's one of the world's best road sprinters, but he got out-sprinted by the big Dutchman. And Van der Poel, he's pretty quick. He's got a great jump on him. But what blew me away is the crowds. Seriously, it's a big course, and they were packed like you could not get a bigger crowd anywhere. That was just amazing, a fantastic race. But we've had just a brilliant summer of cycling. So we haven't done a detour through Tour Down Under. I just want to do a big hats off to Stuart Brady for his Tour Down Under course for the men and the women. Great prologue he did there for the guys. Pinched copied me on the Sun Tour, but that's okay. You know, best form of flattery, they reckon. But it was, everything about it was great. The crowds were really good, especially the last day. His last day course was brilliant up Mount Lofty, but through that wonderful range there through Stirling and all those little places there. Huge crowds. And what a finale. You know, come down to that final sprint. And Jay Vine, wow, he really showing something. Simon Yates was great as well. I felt for Michael Matthews. Michael could well have won that without the chain coming off in that stage, and that cost him big time. But overall, fantastic race, fantastic for the men and the women.
Turtle sent me a photo. It's come through. This is the one you're talking about, isn't it? The Citron crew.
Yeah, that's the crew. There was one with us. That wasn't the one. There was one with us standing outside the plane when they were just about to fly back to Bright. But yeah, doesn't matter. I sent it through, but that's fine. That's fine. But Cadell race. Come on, okay. We'll argue about that later. The Cadell race was great. Both the men's and women's races. Surprise winner, young German who I didn't really know anything about, who took it out. I thought Michael Matthews or Caleb were going to win it, come into the finish. They're both there. I saw Michael try to go through a gap that wasn't there. If he had got through, he maybe would have won, probably would have won, but he didn't get through. So it's an iffy story, but
just on Caleb, obviously he had high expectations coming out to Tour Down Under. Great results there in the past, particularly with Green Edge. Wins the criterion, but it obviously is a different scenario when you don't have your normal team that you're used to with Lotto. Do you think that played a factor, or do you think that something's not quite clicking with Caleb at the moment? Because
I think it's combination.
He has been unlucky. He has been unlucky for a while now, but at some point, the team goes, well, okay, all bad luck aside, paying you big bucks to win sprints.
Yeah. Look, this year he'll have to show it. I mean, I think it was a combination at Tour Down Under. He didn't have his normal Lotto team. And he only had the youngsters from the Australian team. And there was a couple of injuries there as well. So it was even, just a bit unlucky. But he missed out. He flew home in one stage where he ran second. So, and I don't know why he ended up so far back in the Cadell race. He ended up miles too far back. And I just was watching the overview, and I just thought there's wheels going by that normally Caleb, that when he's in great form, would jump onto that and move and use that to skirt up. He didn't do that a couple of times. I thought, well, he's either nailed, and he probably was. But look, go back to last year. I was at the Giro. That's second stage, the stage up the hill where he rode himself inside out to be still in place with Gamay and Van der Poel. To be there was amazing. He made a mistake, hit a wheel, down he went. Those little things can turn everything around. That's what happened. Those things have changed his whole year. I felt for him. I felt he should have been in the team for Wollongong. I reckon that was a mistake not putting him in for a whole stack of reasons. But those things make him angry, and let's see what that anger brings this season. Because when it's all happening, he's the best road sprinter in the world, I believe. So let's watch and see what happens.
If you haven't listened to it, jump on Social Distance Podcast as well. We did a new show last night, and George Bennett and Buells talked about Tour Down Under, and George was like, "Oh, look, not disrespectful to Caleb, but he screwed the race for me because they never let a break go away, and all this sort of stuff." It was quite funny. I'll run through a couple of live comments. Sorry we didn't get through all of them when Froome was here. Chris Ball, he's back, he's pumped. Gary Tiley says, "Good evening, Dan Niffy from the Alfred. I hope he's not crook." Jan Boardman, morning, evening, John and Dan. Great to see the podcast back. The Skull, Frozen Froome. That was obviously early on. Dale Simon says, "Where's Froome? He's still one of the best backstage pass videos." Tom Rendell, he said, I should have played this when Froome was here. He said, "I hope the pace wasn't too high when I paced you back on to the peloton after your nature break in the Warrnambool. Good luck for 2023. I'm sure there wouldn't have been any penalties for Froome. He would have get special exemptions, you'd think. If he..."
Yeah, I agree with that. I'll see Tom tomorrow.
Andy Matthews says, "Good evening, gents. Great to see you back. Wonderful to see how keen Froome still is and how much he just loves cycling." That's another point, because it's one thing to come back, but you've got to have a fair amount of drive. I know he'd be on a good contract and all that sort of stuff, but still, to get through that amount of rehab, it takes a pretty special mentality. Yeah.
Watching him on Saturday, mate, you realise he's just a racer. You put a number on Froome and he races. That's it.
Yeah.
Not about money.
Jan makes a good point. She said, "Chris still came second in the 2012 Tour with a Wigo-shaped anchor. Amazing achievement." Well, that was fascinating when he was talking about that, because, you can tell that he clearly, everyone saw it. Like, if Froome didn't have to ride the team.
Here we go talk now. So they didn't for a couple of years, I can tell you.
Yeah. And Brian Hosky says, "Chris is a ripper, so grounded, great interview, boys." And Damien White says, "Great interview, guys." And also Dave Hanheller, we mentioned at the top. Shout out to Espan, new Colombian champ. So, and then Wheel Wizard says, "Caleb has to compete against his teammate DeLee now too." So
DeLee's good, but he's not Caleb yet. He's got a long way to go to be a Caleb.
All right. Well, we'll see how it all pans out. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Well done, Iffy, lining that up. And we'll see you again. We don't know. Stay tuned on socials. We'll keep you posted.
Yep.
Anything you want to add before we go?
No, just a shout out to all the Detour family, because all right for you, staying away from Down Under. I had a Tour Down Under. I had hundreds of people coming up saying, "What's happening with the Detour? When are you starting again?" And I kept blaming you, of course, which was easy to do because you weren't there. But great to have so much support. Look, Detour is a big part of both our lives, Dan. We love doing it. We have a lot of fun. We have great guests. I got a message from Plappy before, because he's still up there in Bright, but he's heading off shortly. So we'll have to get Plappy before he goes, for sure.
Yep. Definitely. All right. Well, thanks for tuning in, guys. We'll see you again soon. Thanks for all the supporters, if he said. And, take it easy. Thanks again to Chris Froome as well.